Welcome back to Tide Pod on the YouTube home of Tide Illustrated. Jack Knowlton and Tony Tsoukalis bringing you guys our reaction to Alabama's draw in March Madness. The NCAA tournament just released a couple hours ago. We wanted to obviously hop on and break down Alabama's path, where they ended up. The Tide getting a 2 seed there, the 2 seed in the East region. They will be heading to Cleveland, Ohio to play their first game or games, assuming they knock off 15 seed Robert Morris in the first round. That would be followed by a trip to Newark, New Jersey for the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. So the Tide is the 2 seed. Like I said, Robert Morris is their matchup, the 15 seed. They won the Horizon League this season, was the best team wire to wire, I know, in that league. If Alabama wins that game, they will play the winner of St. Mary's and Vanderbilt, the 7-10 seed. St. Mary's, of course, could have been the Tide's matchup in the second round last season. Alabama instead played Grand Canyon, which upset St. Mary's in that 12-5 game. So it was a 13 and then a 12 for Alabama last season. So that path ended up being all right for them. We're going to talk about the whole path, but Tony, just your thoughts on those first 4 teams. What did you think about Alabama's draw there before we kind of widen it out and talk about, the likelihood they can repeat and go back to Final Four?
Yeah, and I mean, and the number 1 team in the region is Duke. There's 3 SEC teams in the region too, with Mississippi State is number 8, and they'll play Baylor number 9. And then there's a lot of actually familiarity because you mentioned Vanderbilt, right?
Yeah.
You got Mississippi State, who Alabama's played twice. You've got Oregon, who beat Alabama in the Players Era tournament.
Mm-hmm.
You've got an Arizona team at number 4 against number 13 at Akron. So yeah, there's a ton of ties here for Alabama in this region. But I like this region. I mean, obviously Duke's a juggernaut, to get into the Final Four if Alabama gets that far. But when you look at this path, right? You mentioned last year, Alabama got a little bit lucky, in terms of getting, some upsets and kind of having an easier initial path to the tournament. They had to play UNC and then Clemson. So those games weren't, easy, but Alabama's run to the tournament wasn't necessarily, or to the Final Four, wasn't as hard as it could have been. I think you could see that again in terms of upsets. I think, Vanderbilt is a team. I think this is where we're going to see maybe the strength of the SEC. Vanderbilt is a team that might beat St. Mary's. And it's kind of funny because Alabama might avoid St. Mary's again in the second round. This Vanderbilt team has beaten some good teams there. They're going to be way more tested than St. Mary's is. So that's a potential upset. We were talking before the show about BYU being a potential upset and possibly being a team that Alabama plays in the Sweet 16. But look, first things first, I like Alabama's kind of, road to the second weekend. I like them against, obviously, Robert Morris. I mean, any 15 seed you throw at Alabama, I think they're going to be fine. But then between whether it's St. Mary's or Vanderbilt, I like Alabama's path. Kind of different styles there. If they play St. Mary's is a very slow team. NATO's is a very fast team. And, we've seen kind of Alabama at times maybe struggle with that. I think, obviously I think you're going to want to have a better shooting game to kind of set the tempo. It's a lot easier to play your game when the shots are falling against a team like that. If they're not, it could get really frustrating and maybe, a St. Mary's could break down in Alabama. But no, I think that I think for the most part, if you're an Alabama fan, you have to be pretty happy. You have to be pretty confident heading into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, when we look at that I guess four team NATO, it's kind of called to that. He said, the only thing I told the guys so far, they briefly met after the selection show, was we're in a 4-team tournament right now. That's all he wants them to see it as. Obviously the goal is to get to that second weekend first and then advance beyond that. So when we look at that quadrant, yeah, it's interesting. Obviously you mentioned the St. Mary's stuff. A quick thing on Robert Morris. They're 139th in Ken Palm. They're in, roughly the mid 100s in both offensive and defensive efficiency. They're a little bit of a better defense. Obviously you can't overlook anyone, but you make a good point. Like Nate Oates has been very good against mid majors, and that's, obviously you should be if you're an elite coach, but it's worth noting. I think we had a lot of that feeling last year when, they played Charleston in that first round, and Charleston was a little bit of a plucky, like, okay, they can score. They had an elite offense. I don't think Robert Morris is as good as Charleston, but and I think Nate Oates' record against mid-majors will have Alabama avoiding a Georgetown in 2013 or a Michigan State in 2018 where they lost to Florida Gulf Coast and Middle Tennessee. I don't think you'll be seeing that. But Robert Morris, is no joke. And then, second round games are really intriguing. I think I'm in the same boat as you. I like them against both Vanderbilt and St. Mary's. To me, the more interesting matchup is obviously St. Mary's because, of course, Alabama played Vanderbilt before, beat them by quite a bit at home. But I will say, like, to plead the case for Vanderbilt a little bit, we saw the Tide struggle against a Missouri team that really turned them over, kind of put a lot of ball pressure on them, got out in transition. Vanderbilt does the same thing. Now, I think Alabama has recovered from that a little bit, but I do think Nate Oates was he wanted to see a little bit of better effort in transition against Florida. And Vanderbilt is a team that very much has an identity and can be dangerous, to teams if they're allowed to kind of impose that. But I still think talent-wise, Alabama gets them there. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on Vanderbilt, St. Mary's. I could throw in my St. Mary's take too, but I'm with you in that boat. I'm not a fan of that matchup. I don't think for St. Mary's.
Yeah, like I think it's going to be. Wait, you said you're not a fan of St. Mary's against Alabama, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. I kind of actually, I don't think Alabama's going to be, or I don't think Alabama's going to be able to avoid St. Mary's this time around. I think this Vanderbilt team is a team that it kind of won the mid-ranked games. They never really beat the elite teams. I know they beat Tennessee once, but they that's like the only, like, I guess, elite team they knocked off. I think it's a team that is good and kind of plucky in the SEC, but I don't know if they're going to beat St. Mary's. On the same hand, though, like you talk about it, you talk about the experience and in playing those teams. Maybe that helps Vanderbilt. I think. I don't know. I'm also just like Alabama avoided St. Mary's one time. I think it's in the cards now that those two have to play. The one thing I will say is you look at Vanderbilt against a team like, you know what, Jack, I might take it back because I'm looking at that Vanderbilt schedule. And this is actually, so we're going to press the rewind button because actually a thought just popped into my head. Look at how Vanderbilt played Tennessee and A&M, two teams that, like to kind of play defense, kind of go half court. They're 1-1 against Tennessee. They beat them 76-75 in Nashville. They lost 81-76 in Knoxville. They beat A&M 86-84 on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So they can play against teams that aren't, necessarily the track teams. And so maybe Vanderbilt, stacks up a little bit better than we're giving them credit for. I think I'm still going to go with St. Mary's, but it's look, kind of digging deeper. This is an instant reaction. So kind of digging deeper, I might not hate Vanderbilt's chances here.
Yeah, that's a very good point in terms of how Vanderbilt's measured up against a team like St. Mary's. And that, I think, is going to be a headline here that, Alabama fans, you guys are going to see in the days coming heading up to this game is when people are going to look at that matchup hypothetically between Alabama and St. Mary's. Clash of styles is going to be the number one thing. St. Mary's is 359th out of, I believe, 363 Division I teams in tempo. They play really slow, kind of methodical offense. They're not phenomenal, but guess what? Just like Texas A&M, they are second in the country in offensive rebound percentage. They crash the glass really well. They don't turn the ball over. They rarely get their shots blocked. They get good methodical looks on offense, and then the way they really make their name for themselves is on the defensive end. And it's kind of like more like Tennessee in that aspect. They don't turn you over a million times like Vanderbilt, a team like Vanderbilt of Missouri tries to do. They play really hard, and they make sure you don't have any easy shots. So to me, when I look at that hypothetical matchup against Alabama, it's shot quality and crashing the glass. Two things they did well against Tennessee and were nearly able to beat them, save for a little Nate Oates bungle there at the end. But that is what you're going to keep hearing is it's going to be really fast versus really slow. It's going to be interesting to see if they do end up playing which team is able to kind of set the tempo, because that's going to be a really big thing in that game. But for Vanderbilt St. Mary's, I don't know. I'm sort of with with you. I think I'd probably go St. Mary's, but it is interesting if Vanderbilt can unlock that again like they did against Tennessee and Texas A&M, they'd have a chance.
Yeah, for sure. I think a good thing you brought up with St. Mary's too is the offensive glass. And when one thing, before we get too deep in the weeds, one of the
Yeah.
things that I think that we should mention is Alabama's could be potentially thin in the front court, but it seemed like they got some good news on Sunday or today when we're recording this, following the announcement of the bracket. Nate Oates kind of provided an update on Grant Nelson, who left the Florida game with a leg injury. His knee is swollen, but he's walking around. And Nate Oates is optimistic about getting him back for the first round. We'll see. I don't actually think they need him against Robert Morris, but they might need him against St. Mary's or Vanderbilt. I think that's definitely something to watch as well.
Yeah, that's a very important thing. Obviously, I mean, the game against Florida completely flipped without Grant Nelson in the game. Florida, a team much better than even St. Mary's and Vanderbilt is, but Alabama, I think it was outscored 63-40 after he got hurt in that game. So it shows you not only how good Florida is at exposing some mismatches, but how important Grant Nelson is to what Alabama tries to do, especially on the glass. I mean, he's their leading rebounder. Alabama is still one of the nation's elite rebounding teams, as much as in some games it kind of goes by the wayside, it feels like. I feel like, I don't know if you'd agree with this. I feel like I watch a lot of games where when they lose the rebounding battle, they don't lose it by a lot, but it feels like they've lost it by a lot more than maybe the score shows, whether it's them giving up too many O boards or letting teams run out and transition off defensive rebounds, which Vanderbilt does. But all that to say, yes, Grant Nelson, I think coming back, or if he is able to come back for potentially that second round game, especially, will be crucial for Alabama. They're obviously going to have a lot of time off. I know Nate Oates said he's going to see a specialist on Monday. So we'll see if anything comes from that diagnosis before he talks again, probably on Wednesday before their first game, or Thursday. So yeah, they have some extra time off, which, we saw that help Nelson come back when they were taking it kind of easier in practice before the Auburn game. So yeah, decent news for sure in terms of an update. But yeah, he's going to be big for what they want to do, whoever they play. I think you're right about that. Yeah. Any other Nelson things or St. Mary's things? Or should we pick the whole region?
Yeah, we could. The one thing I will say, obviously there's no way to judge what Alabama would do without Nelson against St. Mary's, but I guess one positive sign as I'm digging through my back at my Alabama Vanderbilt game, Mo Diabate had a great game in that one. The 22 points, 10 rebounds, and obviously I think I guess the one thing we could discuss too is what is Alabama's plan without Grant Nelson? I think it'd be heavy Mo D. I think he's the guy that you'd have to go. What does a world without Grant Nelson look like for Alabama?
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think to look back. That was his best game. 23 minutes, 22 points, 10 boards. Yeah, I think it would have to be a lot of Mo D. I think Aiden Sherrill, another guy who Alabama fans love, and his limited minutes is going to have to be big if they're without Grant. Obviously, Cliff. I think Cliff's been playing a lot better too. I actually liked his play for the most part against Florida, as bad as almost everyone was in that game. But
would you go? Obviously, not all the time, but would you go 4 guard without? Would you just?
That's a good
balls
question.
to the wall? I thought about that earlier. Like, if there's no Nelson, would you go Cliff with Mark, Aiden,
LeBaron and Chris
and Chris Youngblood? I mean, that kind of seems like that will look. You'll score some points there. I don't know if you'll do anything else, but you should.
I wonder if the Diabate, if it is Vanderbilt they play, if they say, hey, Mo did his damage against them last time, let's give him the start. I think if it's St. Mary's, I go, you got to go Jaron, just because St. Mary's does have some size and they get on the glass. I think you're going to need that presence on the glass to start, but it's not a bad idea in terms of if you're trying to speed them up. I mean, it's not a bad idea to maybe, ultra lean into your smaller guys and lean into your tempo and try and really establish your own game there. But I'd probably go Jaron. That would probably be my pick.
So that's like over Diabate.
Yeah, I think I would start Jaron.
I think I'd go Mo D. I think I'd go Mo D. I wasn't convinced, and I'm looking back at the Florida game. that they lost over the weekend. It didn't seem like Jaren really had that presence that I was expecting from him when Grant went down. When I looked at the way that Florida was playing, I thought Mo D was the guy that was providing the most, I mean, obviously he doesn't have the same size, but I thought he played with the tenacity. He played with the grit. And when it comes down to getting a board, I don't know if I might like him. Disregarding the size, I might like him at that spot either. The other thing you could do too is, I don't think you would, but you could go twin bigs and have Cliff and Aiden Sherrill out there. That kind of limits you in a lot of ways offensively. But with 3 guards, maybe that's a little bit more positive. We have seen Alabama do that lineup as well.
Yeah, they've been using a lot more 3 big lineups, like even without Grant. Like it'll be Cliff, Jaren, and Mo on the court at the same time. We have seen that more. I just wonder if at this point I don't see Nate throwing a wrench into the works that much if he does go with the twin bigs, if he goes Sherrill and Cliff. But it is for sure a notable point in terms of how players are trending. Diabate against Florida was a lot better. The other thing you're going to have to need, regardless of Grant's status, is the guards to play better. I mean, Mark Steers, LeBaron Philon, and Youngblood, for the most part, he got kind of going in the second half, but all of them were kind of non-factors. I mean, they really could not get going. So that's going to have to happen. But yeah, it's an interesting thought experiment. Obviously, the hope for them will be that Grant comes back and does and is able to play. But yeah, I think my lead pick right now would be Jaren. But the 4 guards, I think, would be my second. That would be what I'd want to see the most. That would be the most fun.
I think that'd be really fun, especially against a team that likes to slow. Like, you want to totally try to run a team off the court. I mean, a team that's not used to playing fast. Maybe just so often, I'm one of these guys that instead of adapting to the opponent, like maybe emphasize your strength and I'd like to almost see what would happen if you threw 4 guards at St. Mary's and would they be able to stop it?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because it's obviously your season is on the line, and playing devil's advocate to that, if it blows up in your face and St. Mary's is completely able to just grind the game down, and Alabama has
Cliff on the free throw line, and then just have them spread out around the.
There you go.
Around the rim,
a little 5-out like Kentucky runs, and just go all into it. It'll be interesting. Tip-off for that game against Robert Morris, first and foremost, is 11:40 a.m. Central in Cleveland. It's going to be on True TV, also on the March Madness app, which I believe you get 20 minutes, if I remember right, from watching games during high school. I think you get 20 minutes of free use, and then you have to make an account. So that's just a little helpful watch pointer there. But
what minutes would you watch?
Actually, I think it's like an hour. I lied. I think it's a little longer.
Would you want to see the first half of the Robert Morris game or the second half, or would you just save your time?
I think I would if I had to be that
experiment of what's the best way to use your free 60 minutes.
Yeah, if I had to, purely for Alabama, if we're not talking about other games, I'd probably do the second half and then I would save it, and it would be like the second half, and once they're up by 10, I would turn it off, and then you'd have to save it for the next round.
Wait, you can bank minutes?
I think so. I don't think it just goes. I think it remembers you and resumes when you log back in.
Oh, that
changes things.
Yeah, that creates a whole different thing. I maybe I'd watch the first 10 minutes of Robert Morris, save it, and then watch a little bit and then see. Then you can just kind of read option it.
Yeah.
If Alabama gets out to a 20-point lead somehow against St. Mary's, probably just tuck it back in.
Shut it down. Yeah. You gotta be strategic. These are the thought experiment deep dives on Tide Pod here. Tony, should we finish things off? Should we pick the whole region? Should we pick Alabama's little quad?
I like the idea of picking the region. One, I haven't. My brain is fried. So it might be kind of zany thing to do, but we can do it.
Picking the. I guess maybe forecasting Alabama's path to the Final Four a little bit here.
For sure. Yeah.
So we'll go one by one. I guess what is your pick for them getting out of this?
Let's break down this. Let's just break down the region. Let's just.
You want to rattle off the region?
Yeah, I'm starting. Let's start with Duke.
All right. Well, we've got Duke, obviously the 1 seed. They will play the 16 seed. I believe it's either American
Mount St. Mary's versus American.
Yeah, it's either Mount St. Mary's or American. Does the third ever 16-1 upset happen?
Depends on who. No, just kidding. No, it's not. It's not going to happen.
Big American Eagles fan, Tony
Yeah,
Sakalas.
I'm going to go American. How can you not pick American?
Because Mount St. Mary's court just says the Mount on it, and I will be picking Mount St. Mary's.
I'm not anti-American, so I'm gonna pick American, but I'm gonna pick Duke ultimately to win that game.
So the 8-9 one is interesting for the right to play Duke, Mississippi State, and Baylor. I like Baylor here.
I like Mississippi State, and I know that that's like a bad time to pick them, but I think, look, I'm gonna on games that are this close, I'm gonna lean SEC. And I know I said that, and I'm probably gonna pick St. Mary's later on, but like I think with an 8-9, I think this is the benefit of playing in the SEC might help. The Big 12 is not a bad conference, and so Baylor's played some tough teams, but I like Mississippi State here. I think this is a statement win for the SEC when it comes down to it, and kind of proving the point that, hey, this team got 14 bids for a reason.
Yeah, it's obviously interesting. They broke the record, of course, with the 14 bids, so we'll see how they do. Well, I'll do these two at a time. The 5-4 or 5-12 and the 4-13. You got Oregon, Liberty, and Akron, Arizona. Does an upset happen in either one of those games?
Gosh, I always want to pick a 12 over a 5. You know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna pick American, and I'm gonna pick Liberty, and basically anybody else that has a patriotic theme in this bracket, I might pick them as well. But no, I'm gonna pick Liberty over Oregon and Arizona over Akron.
I will be picking probably a couple 5-12s. This is not one of them. I have Oregon. I have Arizona. Moving down.
You always got to zig when people are zagging. If people like Oregon, I'm going Liberty.
Yeah, especially those 5-12 games. So this region, the right to potentially see Alabama in the Sweet 16, working your way there. You've got BYU, VCU in the 6-11, and then Wisconsin, Montana in the 3-14. I have the Cougars and Badgers matching up in the second round there.
Yeah, I'm going chalk here. The BYU is only a 3.5 point favorite. You like BYU, to go to the Elite Eight almost.
I think BYU could go to the Elite Eight. I really do. Yeah, they're a good team.
Yeah, I think that they probably should be more than the 3.5 point favorite over VCU. So I'll take them, and then I'm not going to take a 14 over a 3 here. I don't love Wisconsin, but I don't know anything about Montana. So
I believe they have won, I think it's 12 in a row, if I'm not mistaken. I do like the Grizz, but I will not take them over the Badgers. And then the games we've been talking about this whole show, St. Mary's, Vanderbilt. Who do you have playing Alabama? I'm just going to book it Alabama into the second round.
Yeah, I'll take St. Mary's. But like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if it's Vanderbilt. I will take St. Mary's for some of the reasons why I said. What maybe the biggest reason here is that I just don't see a world where Alabama avoids it. I feel like the basketball gods put St. Mary's in this bracket for a reason. It's for Alabama to play St. Mary's.
I think St. Mary's will establish itself enough against Vanderbilt. I love what Mark Byington is doing, but I do think the SEC school goes down here. So let's stay down below here. What is your Sweet 16 matchup look like? Is it Alabama playing potentially, or is it Alabama, and are they playing BYU or Wisconsin?
So I will take Alabama because I like their path, and I'm going to go with Wisconsin. I know I'm going a lot of chalk here at the bottom of this bracket, but I'm not buying necessarily your hype with BYU. So I'm going to go with Wisconsin. I'm going to go Alabama, Wisconsin.
It would be a high-powered offensive matchup either way. Wisconsin, BYU both run really good offenses. I'm going to go with the Cougars. I got the Cougars and the Tide meeting in the Sweet 16. And then up top, do you have Duke advancing? And then you, I guess, picked Liberty. So it'd either be Liberty or Arizona that they'd be facing. Or do you like Mississippi State to go to the Sweet 16?
Yeah, I'm going to go chalk here too. I'm going to go Duke over. Are we picking two different? Are we doing two at a time? Am I doing Duke?
Yeah, you got Duke, and then
you got
Liberty, Arizona.
I've got Duke, Mississippi State. I'm picking Duke, and then I've got Liberty versus Arizona, and I'm picking Arizona.
All right, so you've got 1, 4, 2, 3. So then, do you have an upset here in the Sweet 16? Who do you got between Duke and Arizona, and then the Badgers and Tide? Does Alabama go back to the Elite Eight?
I'm going full Tide here, and I'm gonna go Arizona. First of all, I gave it away. I'm going to go Alabama over Wisconsin. I think, I think this Alabama team is a team that when it gets hot, when it gets things going. Now, it's hard to say that after they had a really good game against Kentucky and then just hit a brick wall in the second half against Florida. I think a lot of that has to do with how good Florida is, though. I think when you give this Alabama team some momentum, it can really get things going. I think you didn't see that necessarily at the end of the season because the schedule was so hard, but you give Alabama 2 winnable games, I feel like, against Robert Morris, and whether it's St. Mary's or Vanderbilt, they start getting some confidence. They head into it. I think that, I like them against Wisconsin in that. So, yeah, I'll take Alabama with that. Like you said, it's going to be a high offensive game. I think Alabama likes those more. When it comes down to it, I think Alabama likes to play the track meet, I'll take Alabama there. I'm taking Arizona. I don't trust a Duke team that's, I don't trust any team really that their best player is a freshman. There's going to be so much pressure on Cooper Flagg. He's a great player. Duke's a great team. One of these ones is going to have to fall. And I just think that the team, there's going to be all this pressure on Cooper Flagg. Who knows, where he is from an injury standpoint. I think he's fine. I think that's probably a little bit overplayed. But, yeah, I'm going to pick that. And Alabama is going to get some crap from, I'm sure, all of its rivals for avoiding a number 1 seed on its path to the Final Four. But I have Alabama versus Arizona.
I'm going to go Alabama Duke here. I do have Duke cruising all the way to the Elite Eight. I think they can beat Arizona. I do agree, though, it's going to be hard to pick against all these 1 seeds, and something is going to have to give. And Arizona and Oregon are both dangerous teams, so that could be potentially scary for Duke. I do have Alabama beating BYU. Also in a track meet, BYU, very good offense. They have another good freshman named Igor Demen. He is a draft pick as well. Not as good as Cooper Flagg, but I do like the Tide there. I think you're right. I do think they'll like a track meet game a little bit better for as much as BYU's been surging. I think Alabama will get it done. And then who reaches the Final Four? Alabama or Duke? Or for you, Alabama or Arizona?
While I can think a little bit about it.
All right. Alabama, Duke. Duke's a really good defensive team. Beat Auburn in Cameron Indoor Stadium, one of the better wins. Obviously, Alabama got a win over the Tigers as well. I am going to pick Tide to go back to San Antonio. However, wow. I think they will. I think they can do enough. I think they have to find, the same thing they found from an emotion and from an energy standpoint, the same thing that they found from last year. But I think if they can do it, they have the talent to beat Duke. They are a really good defensive team. It is going to be tough. It will have to be just like how the Auburn game went, essentially like a carbon copy. Duke is one of those teams. I am not scared of the freshman stuff at all. I think they're going to be fine. I think they've got some experience to sort of match that too. This year, John Shire's a good coach, but Nate Oates, the more experienced coach in March, prevails. I think he does enough to get Alabama there. I've got him going back to San Antonio. I like it.
So I've got Alabama and Arizona, so it's a different argument. I don't know why I waited.
That's okay.
To do that.
Yeah.
So I look, it'd be so like Alabama to get this far, have a favorable draw, and then just throw it away against an Arizona team. But I think I feel weird about picking Alabama to go to the Final Four. But I like I said, I like the way this bracket happened, especially if Duke loses. So I am going to go with Alabama. It'll be Caleb Love, with a person that they've played against before. Yep. It'll also be Jaden Bradley.
Yes, revenge game.
Not forget about a little bit of a reunion there for a former Alabama transfer. So
all right,
that team that lost the number 1 overall seed that lost 2 years ago. He was part of that. So it's kind of interesting to see what Jaden Bradley would have been like. I guess he wasn't really as much of a Nate Oates player. You know what I'm saying? He kind of I don't know if he was as much of a fit, but for those who haven't kept track, he's averaging 11.8 points and 3.7 assists and shooting to 29% from 3. So that's the reason why he's not on this team. But no, he's a good player. They're a good team, and I think they're a team to watch as well. But I have Alabama going to the Final Four.
All right, we both like the Tide's path. Yeah, Arizona's a good team. Jane Bradley's a good player for them. I'm intrigued to see what.
A really good defensive player too.
Yes, excellent defensive player.
Averages about 2 steals a game. So I mean, like that is actually why he would be on the on Alabama.
Very tenacious defender for sure. He will be. It will be fun if he has to match up against Mark Sears. That'll be a cool matchup if that can happen this time around. So there's your path for Alabama to the Final Four. It's that easy, Just got to win a couple games in March.
I made it pretty easy. I made it. I made it.
Yeah,
I did him a favor. So you're welcome.
So there you go. We'll obviously have plenty of coverage in the build up to the tournament. So go subscribe over on Tide Illustrated for that. Podcasts coming out. We'll re-predict Alabama's draw after upsets inevitably happen, and Alabama plays Akron for the right to go to San Antonio. But yeah, that'll do it for Tide Pod. Just wanted to get our reactions out there to Alabama's draw with the latest Grant Nelson news, all that stuff. And yeah, subscribe. We'll be dropping plenty more episodes. Have plenty over on the site as well. Subscribe there. Give us a follow if you're listening on Spotify. And yeah, football back this week as well. So plenty to subscribe for. We'll have all of it for you. We'll see you next time.